This podcast is part of the Democracy Group.
Welcome. We are talking politics and religion without killing each other. I am your host, Corey Nathan, and I am so grateful to have a place to talk about faith and politics and big ideas in our culture with all kinds of interesting, accomplished folks of goodwill in good faith. And it is an honor to announce that our program is a part of the Democracy Group. That's a network of podcasts that examines what's broken in our democracy and how we can work together to fix it. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already. Tell a friend, give us a good rating, and leave a review. Easiest way to find us is our main site, which is www.politicsandreligion.us. That's www.politicsandreligion.us. Or you can feel free to connect with me on all the social media apps: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Post News, Tribal. I'm on all the crazy cool kid apps at Corey S. Nathan. That's at Corey, S as in Sam, Nathan, at Corey S. Nathan. All of that helps get the word out so more people can participate in the conversation like the one we're having today with former Congressman Denver Riggleman. Denver Riggleman supported advanced intelligence analysis and technical development programs during his over 2 decades as an intelligence officer, NSA advisor, federal contractor, research and development technology lead, and successful CEO of support companies for the Department of Defense. A veteran of the global war on terror and multiple worldwide operations, he served with honor in the U.S. Air Force for 9 active duty years and is a former member of the House of Representatives from Virginia's 5th Congressional District, which he represented as a Republican from 2019 to 2021. Former Congressman Riggleman is also a former senior technical advisor for the House Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol. He's a CEO of Riggleman Information Intel Group and co-owner of the award-winning Silverback Distillery. Definitely going to have to ask you about that. But also, I got to say, former Congressman Riggleman is the New York Times best-selling author of The Breach. I bet Bigfoot, It's Complicated is going to come on that New York Times bestseller list too.
You never know.
How you doing? Thanks for coming in. How's everything going?
It's going pretty good, Corey. Thanks for having me. Happy day. Happy day. I appreciate you having me. Happy day.
This is a real treat for me. So I have to start. The most important thing. How did you and Christine get into the whiskey business?
Oh my goodness, man. Well, so back in 2012, I sold my first company, which was called Analyst Warehouse, which was a company that supported United States Air Force, National Security Agency, Special Operations. So when I sold that company, I told my wife, Corey, I said, hey, you've been following me around since we were 16 years old. It's your turn, And I said, whatever you want to do, I'll support. And we were in Scotland. I had taken my daughters and my wife to Scotland to celebrate the sale of my company. We were at Ben Nevis Distillery in Fort William, Scotland. And Christine, I think, got enamored with the master distiller there. I don't think it was inappropriate, but it was damn close, right? And then but she loved it. And but yeah, when we got home, we were on the 21st floor of a condo in Florida vacationing after Scotland. It was a fun few weeks. And she goes, I know what I want to do. I said, what's that, honey? And she goes, I want to start a distillery. So my wife is the one who wanted to be a master distiller. And now we have the only mother-daughter master distilling team in the United States. And we started Silverback Distillery in Afton, Virginia, in the Blue Ridge Mountains outside of Charlottesville. We opened another one in the Poconos in Pennsylvania. So it's been one hell of a ride.
Oh, wow. That's, it's funny. I was saying before we hit record that I went to a whiskey tasting last night. I mentioned Silverback, and I'm talking to the one of the owners of Silverback. They said, did you know that's one of, if not the only mother-daughter owned female-owned distillery? So where is Silver? So there's one, you say, up in Pennsylvania and one down in Western Virginia?
Yeah, we retrofitted an aircraft hangar in the Poconos in Pennsylvania at East Stroudsburg, and then which I'm really proud of. But that's only been open a few years. That's fairly new, but it's gorgeous. 37-foot bars, and
wow.
We smoke drinks on our own barrel heads there. But we do that in Virginia too. So we have a 50-acre distillery property outside of Charlottesville, Virginia, about 2.5 hours west of D.C. In the Blue Ridge Mountains here. So we're on the river. I look out right now. I got 3,000 feet of river frontage out here, and so it's doesn't suck.
Oh,
doesn't
man.
suck, Corey.
Doesn't suck. It's above average. I'm definitely going to have to
average.
let you know. I have occasion to go, like this summer, I'm hoping to go to the Braver Angels convention in Gettysburg that they have around July 4th. So I'm going to have to take a little bit of a detour up to the Poconos or something, or my buddies down in DC, take a detour out to the distillery in Virginia there. So it's a must.
Let me know. We got barrel houses, man. You could break into them, let me know.
That's awesome. So there was something that you related in the book that I thought really strikes at the heart of it's both heartbreaking, heart-wrenching, but also strikes at the heart of why I think you do what you do. But you can tell me, I'd like to know your thoughts. So I just want to read a text thread you shared in The Breach. Like I said, New York Times bestselling book. It's a great read, by the way. I was so entranced for anybody who's engaged in important matters that are happening in our country. So this text thread is from late 2020 after the election, but before the events of January 6th. It's a text thread sent to you by your mom. She said, oh man, it's going to hit me. How does it feel making touchdowns for the opposing team? You just keep handing over ammunition to the enemy. What is wrong with you? She wrote. What happened to you? You want socialism. You want babies murdered because they are not perfect. I don't even know you anymore. What will it take to wake you up, son? I love you so, but cannot stand by and listen to your elitist attitude and being praised by elitist journalists and Democrats. She went on to say, I've cried over you and my heart is broken by you. And the last part of that thread, she said, you are not smarter than truth. So I'd love to get your thoughts. I thank you, by the way, for sharing such a personal note in that book. But I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's this book was intensely personal when I wrote it. I think a lot of people misunderstood it initially because I did try to make data and facts exciting, but I also wanted to show really what had happened in our country, sort of with this conspiracy or cult mindset surrounding Donald Trump and really surrounding what the GOP had become at that time. And Corey, that text, I will tell you, surprised me also, right? And we had a phone conversation before that was a little bit more brutal than that. And I think that text was after a Jake Tapper TV interview. But it's hard for me to actually wrap my arms around it because I do love my mom. Who doesn't, love their mother, right? I mean, I love her to death. And I actually wrote this chapter. Corey, if you read it, I tried to write it with love, right? And I thought it would help with healing. It didn't really. It had really, again, an effect that was even worse than I thought it could have, had. But I think what we have seen, and the way that I was raised in a very religious setting, I think we've seen sort of this metastasization of a belief systems that really overtake facts or just overtake basic truths. And, my training wasn't intelligence. So really the anger at that point that my mother had was I had really turned against Donald Trump and had come out very strong against QAnon. So what you're reading is actually me going out against, which, I don't think my mother fully understands, the conspiracy theory mindset or QAnon and things like that, but she certainly had those belief systems. But I think it was really coming out against Donald Trump. And I think that's the effective or how it affects people, Corey, is really when a cult or a cult of personality or some distant figure actually trumps family. I'm not saying that as a pun, but actually trumps family. And I think that's happened to so many people in the country. I thought it would be helpful to say that none of us are immune, from that sort of fight of facts over fantasy. And it was a devastating time for me. It's still devastating, but love my mother. And I hope one day that we can come to some kind of resolution on that. And to this day, I don't know if I should have put that chapter in the book, honestly, Corey. I'm not sure if it was the right thing to do or not. I just thought at the time it was appropriate to maybe highlight what's going on in our country right now.
Yeah. And to your point, the book is a lot about both a 30,000 foot view as well as getting into the microcosmic details of text threads and just real intel work, the dirty work of intel work.
Right.
It's also, how do we solve these problems? And I think at one point in the book, you said that intelligence, information, but also it's about relationships. I appreciated you sharing this story because at the end of that chapter, and also at the end of the book in the acknowledgments, I saw that maybe it's not resolved. It sounds like there's still, unanswered questions, some hard feelings. But the way you described that moment in time when you came back together, when your sister was in the ICU, I thought maybe there is an opportunity, whether it's something as dramatic as that, when you were about to get open heart surgery and your sister was in the ICU, and that
right above me.
Yeah.
Right above me. Yeah. Right, yeah. Was it? Yeah. Right above me. Yeah. I was right below her. And, the thing is, Corey, is that, I did have surgery, wasn't open heart at that point. We didn't know what was happening. I had had issues before, but I think I never thought I would be affected by anxiety, stress, and just an overwhelming sort of breakdown based on the fact, my sister was dying right that second. My mother had just had to sign a do not resuscitate. And I saw the strength of my mother at that time, the love I had for her. And we had had this sort of awfulness going on between us beforehand, it's sort of familial. Then she's sitting beside me in the ER while my daughter is dying. My sister, I'm sorry.
Her
She's
daughter,
sitting, yeah, she's sitting beside me while her daughter is dying above me, right? My sister, just unbelievable, right? And just, I don't know, man. And at that time, I was on the committee. I was having some issues of my own with the committee as I'm looking at, Ginny and Clarence Thomas, and I'm finding data that I maybe expected to see, but was more chilling than I thought. And again, it's all in the data. But I think all of that together with my family, with businesses, with what happened in my congressional race, right, with being beat by somebody who believes in QAnon, a conspiracy theorist, all that stuff I think must have just coalesced in that hospital room, Corey. And I think, what a crazy time that was.
Yeah. I definitely want to talk about January 6th and what you refer to as social contagions. But I think it is important to quote from the end of your book. Again, this cuts deep. You say, "Mom, I might not have taken the exact road you wanted me to, but without you, I wouldn't be where I am today, and I wouldn't change a thing. I love you." You're getting me, former Congressman Riggleman.
Listen, it makes me emotional now. I'm actually trying not to, I keep the smile on my face, and because it's a brutal, and that's what the thing is I don't want people to think that, Corey, it is a brutal book though, right? There's some funny in there, right? There is some things that are you laugh in horror, especially in some of the chapters like with Jenny Thomas or Ray Epps. But I think it's, laughter through tears. What does that say? Life is laughter through tears. And I think that's pretty much how I've lived the past 53 years. and that, so there you go.
So I think if they do make a book, make a movie out of your Bigfoot book, I know the guy to play the part, and that is Patrick Byrne.
He's tall. I mean,
I'm telling you, man.
I mean, he'd fit the Bigfoot suit. I mean, but yeah, I mean, I think Byrne would be a great, plus he might believe it anyway. He might believe he's actually Bigfoot. I mean, this is a guy who believes the Lord of the Rings is a documentary, So there you go.
Damn. All right. So before we get into social contagion, politics, and all that good, beautiful, rich, wonderful comedy, I just want to paint the picture a little bit about who you are. So can you tell us a little bit about apartment A1?
Are you talking about back when I was a kid?
Yeah, like where you grew up and Mormon
oh my
church.
God.
Take it wherever you want to take it.
Oh my God, apartment A1, man, Coverstone Apartments, 10928 Coverstone Apartments, Manassas, Virginia. Raised really, my dad left when I was really young. So, single mom for a while, the mom who, still loves so much, but, without her, again, I wouldn't be here, right? She had me at 17. Raised sort of, I would say by my mom, but also my grandparents on both sides for a while, as we hopped from house to house sometimes. But she met my stepfather, I think in 1974, 1975. She was married March 75 to my stepfather. But by 78, they had started a full conversion into the Mormon church at that time, Corey. So, yeah. But in that small apartment, I had a lot of brothers and sisters, that started to come out. Right. And, but
how'd you fit? What, 7 kids, 9 kids in apartment A1?
Yeah. Well, no. What? So at that point, I was the oldest of 8, but I think by 1980 we had 1, 2, 3, 4. I think we had a 2 or 3 bedroom small apartment. I think we had 4 kids in there, 2 parents, and a 5th kid on the way. When we finally moved to my grandfather's old house on Loman Drive in Virginia, and again March of 1980. So I think it was March 4th, 1980. We moved to 9810 Loman Drive, right? And that's where I went to Stonewall Middle School. I went to Sinclair Elementary, then Stonewall Jackson Middle School, then Stonewall Jackson High School. I was a Raider. And then, I mean, we're in Manassas, Virginia, Corey. I mean, the Battle of Bull Run, the national parks right there, for the Civil War. So, that's how I was sort of brought up, right? And also brought up in the Mormon church. So very religious, very, very religious. I played a lot of sports, but always was taught, that our religion was the only true religion. And really us, as the way we're configured, we are the dominant, human beings on the planet as Mormon people. The only what a way to be raised. My grandparents were Southern Baptist, so they weren't real happy that I was I was being raised Mormon or LDS, right?
Right.
They were always like, this is, and even as a young kid, I'm talking about 11, 12, 13 years old, they're like, hey, that's hogwash. You need to be Southern Baptist. You need to go over here. And my grandmother on my mom's side was raised Methodist. So it was just an absolute incredible upbringing with all the religious influences that I had. And as you can see now, I'm not really religious at all anymore. I sort of moved away from all that because I think being raised that way, I remember that there was always this sort of belief that faith was stronger than any facts-based thing that you could see. When you're being raised as Mormon, you're told that any book that you read that actually goes against the Mormon religion was actually the devil, and you're an apostate to embrace that or read that. And I think that's the thing that we see right now is that you're an apostate, if you remove yourself from the GOP or, if you remove yourself from that tribe or you remove yourself from a belief system, that more people believe in your mob or around you in a mob than you do, right? They overwhelm you. And I think that's why I hate bullies. I was raised as a bit of a scrapper. I was very small. And I remember I got my butt kicked, Corey, so many times. But by the age of 8 or 9, I remember my stepdad's like, you got to fight, right? And so I did push back. I still have been actually had my butt handed to me more times than I can count when I was a kid. But I didn't back down too much. And I think what happens is if you get enough ass whoopings, you actually start to get a little bit immune to it, and you also learn how to do a little bit back yourself.
Yeah.
So I think somebody told me once, Corey, you're really not a man, and I'm not trying to, maybe in this new world, but you're not really a man till you've kicked some ass and had your ass kicked, and I've definitely had plenty of both. so that really being raised the way I was, I think I learned that I'm not a religious guy. I think there are a lot of cults or a lot of belief systems that really overwhelm a person's ability to think rationally, and I think a lot of times that faith can actually turn you against friends and family based on belief systems that, for somebody who looks at facts or data, could be a little wackadoo.
Yeah, it's interesting because that wanting to fight back against bullies shows up in so many different times, so many different ways, whether it's when you were starting to question the Mormon church or your work on the January 6th committee, your work in Congress, even as a distiller, fighting up against some of the institutional forces as you're building your distillery. It's amazing how that fighting against big bullies shows up.
Yeah, it'll give you some scar tissue though, and you get tired. I'm 53 and I look like I'm 108. I think that's, I think that's all. I remember I was sitting in a bar the other day, not of course, but it was my own at the distillery. But somebody goes, Denver, you look great for your age. I'm like, well, thank you, man. He goes, honestly, nobody would think that you're like 55 or 56. I'm like, wait, I'm 53. Yeah. What are you talking about?
So I had a very similar experience a couple of weeks ago. I was talking to this lady, and for whatever reason, she was talking to, there was another person involved in the conversation. They were talking about the year that they were born. And I said, yeah, I'm 71. And she goes, you look great for 71. I said, no. I was born in 71. She goes, oh, you look like shit for having been born in 71.
Oh, man. It's so funny, man. Because by the way, you look great, I think, right? But I was a St. Patrick's Day baby, March 17th, 1970. And I was almost named Patrick.
Oh, man.
And then I got the name Denver Lee Riggleman, the third, because I am the third. But I've had it's been a crazy life, Corey, and you're right. When you put it that way, if you think about even my military career, fighting ethnic cleansing in Kosovo in 99, one of the first to deploy in 9/11, going to NSA, starting my own companies because I hated, how other companies were run. but I will tell you, I've cut off my nose to spite my face more times than I count. So especially like you said in Congress, when I officiated the same-sex wedding in summer of 2019.
That's when I first became aware of you, by the way. I always had an eye for somebody who did something that was independent. Even if they're the voting record, your voting record was pretty conservative, along the lines of Kinzinger and Cheney. And yet you had individual moments where you asserted your independence of thought, your independence of principles, your independence of integrity. And that's when you first caught my attention. So when I read and I put to get two and two together that you were actually running to be a part of the Freedom Caucus, I was like, oh shit, wait, hold on. And something was like not making sense, because my awareness of you started around that time of the conducting a gay wedding. So
I remember. Oh yeah, I address this all the time. People are like, well, how in the hell could you have been in a Freedom Caucus and officiated a gay wedding and been on the Climate Change Caucus, which might have been worse for the conservatives in my district than the gay wedding, honestly. I think what it came down to is I won by one vote. I am an accidental congressman, Corey, and I had never run, for federal office before. I tried 10 weeks in governor, just not even that long before that. I hadn't been I'm 53 at my first I barely voted until I was 47. I didn't give a rat's ass, So, but
you can say fuck, by the way. I saw you wanted to say. I know. We got the explicit rating, so it's all good.
Well, that's good, because I've been known to do that a bit. But I think what happened, Corey, is that, in life, you think that you won't compromise anything. And in order for me to get elected, I remember I told my consultant, I'll never compromise. I'll always be that person of integrity. I had just won by one vote. And he looked at me, and this is a lesson that I think everybody should think about in politics. And this is as serious as I can get. As he goes, well, Denver, did you want to be a member of the Freedom Caucus? I said, well, no. He goes, but you just pledged to be a member of the Freedom Caucus to win an election. He goes, you've already made your first political decision. You already went against some of your baseline principles to win. And that consultant said, listen, you've got to act a little crazy to beat the crazier members. He goes, it's all about winning. That's all that matters. And that's even what McCarthy told me, that winners make history. When I went into the orientation, he said, who cares how you win? Is that you're going to make history? Losers don't make history. My Lord. You know what? And if I didn't do the gay wedding, or if I didn't join the Climate Change Caucus, or I would have voted 100% how my local committees wanted me to in the Freedom Caucus, I would be a congressman today. That's simple. Or if I had a primary and not a church convention with, 2,500 people in a church 5 minutes from my opponent's house. Everything about this was so wrong and so brutal. Now I'm pissed. And the thing is I don't like bullies. So I continued, right? J6 committee, I wrote a book. I'm dragging people through the woods. I probably have more influence now than I ever did. I've been on every major network, from 60 Minutes to Meet the Press to ABC Nightly News to you name it, man.
You got a Frontline coming out. Got an appearance on that Frontline.
Got another Frontline. I was I was on the Mike Flynn Frontline, okay. And I just did 2 more movie shoots. I got one book shopped for a movie right now. I got a second book that's about to be shopped for a movie. And why? Because sometimes when you lose with integrity, you actually can win. And I think maybe in the future, I might have a chance to run for office again, but I find it so distasteful, because I don't know if I have the ability, after what I did the first 8 to 9 months in office, where I went against my principles. I don't know if I have the ability to do that. I just don't know if I can pander and compromise enough to be an effective politician as far as getting elected. And I do think that politics and integrity are mostly mutually exclusive at this point. And unless you're batshit crazy, and then you have all the integrity world of the Marjorie Taylor Greens or the Bob Goods in my district, or the Lauren Boeberts, right? Their integrity is in their insanity and their belief systems, which really are representative, of the evangelical bent and the conspiracy theories that sort of bloom out of that. So, yeah, I guess you can have integrity in your insanity, but if you have an integrity in facts insanity, I think it's very difficult to win an election today.
So as a wannabe optimist, let me ask you this. Is there any way to do what you have to do to win in politics without having to make the kinds of compromises that go into the gray area of one's integrity?
Well, it's one of the hardest questions I've had to answer, because I feel guilty every day. I feel proud that I did the wedding, and I feel guilty because I allowed an insane wackadoo to come in behind and to use that as a cudgel against me and even the men that I married, and to say the worst things and to win on that. And I always wondered, should I have tried to pick a better time to do it? And I'm thinking, no, God dang it, no. I need to do the right thing at the right time, or I sort of go against who I am. But does that somehow leverage or compromise the American public, knowing that the guy who came behind me, is some low rent conspiracy theorist mouth breather, right? That's just going to follow the line of the Freedom Caucus no matter what, and follow the line of the committees in our district that are, also, maybe have been addicted to huffing glue their whole lives based on what they believe. So those are the things that, that I have to sort of deal with every day with my conscience, is that I didn't go all the way in, but I couldn't, because I just couldn't live with myself. Yeah. And I mean, that's the truth of it. But would I run again? Maybe, but it would have to be for an executive position, because there's no way. Everybody's like, God, you must miss Congress and the power that I had. The power. I was a backbencher. You know what I did do? I get the #1 reservation at the Capitol Grill, though. I was a congressman, so I got really good restaurant reservations. So,
had good health care for a couple of years.
I had good health. Yeah. I pay for my, we have our own company, so we do that. I went to much cooler parties in the military and overseas than I did in Congress. I had much cooler parties. I've had a hell of a life. Congress awesome. Is just part of this service, and not the highlight of my life at all. I probably got fired from the worst job I ever had, to be honest.
Oh, man. So I want to read another way that you kind of summarize your political sure. Disposition. You say, I believe in removing unnecessary regulations to allow small businesses to grow and entrepreneurs to succeed. I'm a strong Second Amendment guy. At the same time, I support gay marriage and legalizing marijuana. My line was that I didn't want a party small enough to fit in anyone's bedroom. While I lean pro-life, I believe in the right to abortion early on in a pregnancy, and I'm adamant about exceptions for victims of rape or incest, or for when the mother's health is at stake. Is there a party for those beliefs? I mean, I think that represents a plurality of us, or at least we're somewhere adjacent to all. There's a plurality that are adjacent to all of what you articulated, right? That the extremists are the vast minority, but yet they're the loudest. They're taking all the oxygen out of the room. So is there a home for people like us?
I don't know, because I had a conversation with somebody like, Denver, I was in my distillery 2 days ago. Now, you got to remember too, Corey, I mean, I got hundreds of thousands of people come to my distillery. It's not just Congress and running for office where I met so many people. I mean, I get to meet a lot of people drinking, and in whiskey veritas, my friend, trust me. So, right. So, so here we are, and it's this lady who's been a fan of mine for so long. She goes, you're going to run again. I said, I don't know, Jane. That's not her real name.
Yeah.
I don't know, Jane. I don't think I'm going to run again. I said, but I do appreciate you here drinking our whiskey. I said, happy. I said, I'll buy you a drink. She goes, well, Denver, I got to drive. I said, okay, gotcha. We don't want any of that. So she goes, you need to reiterate to me what your position is on abortion. So I'm going to run this by you. I don't have to frickin' quibble anymore. I can tell people exactly what I think, the truth, what Denver Riggleman thinks. And so here you go. Wait till you hear. I said, okay. I said, listen, when I ran for Congress, I said I was pro-life, but I had exceptions for rape, incest, and health of the mother. The reason I got in trouble, Corey, and I told her this, the reason I got in trouble is they said, if you say health of the mother, you're actually pro-life. I mean, pro-choice. You got to say life of the mother. You can't say health of the mother, because it could be mental health or any health thing between her and her doctor. So Denver, you were actually projecting as being pro-choice, and you were lying about being pro-life. Okay. Wow. So I said, that's what happened to me. I said, but I've even changed more based on my 3 daughters and my wife. She goes, well, how's that? I said, I think up to scientific viability of the child, it's always between a mother and her doctor and family. Mm. Now, I said, is it a 15 or 20 weeks where there should be restrictions? I said, I do have a belief in that. I think that once a child is identified as being viable outside the womb, I think that does become something that is, as a society, we have to take into consideration that is a child that's alive outside the womb. And as far as life's concerned, I think they have rights. So I said, I think restrictions should be after 15 to 20 weeks. I think there should be restrictions on abortion. But up until that point, I think it's between the mother, her doctor, and her family. That's Denver Riggleman.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And she goes, well, then I can't vote for you. Life begins at conception. And so she goes, God says it. I said, okay. I said, understand that. I said, but what if, what just happened? What if a 12-year-old is raped by her father? Life begins at conception. There's no way. There's just no way for me. I don't know if there is a place. I guess I'm using that story court. I don't know if there's a place for somebody who's trying to say, hey, nope, there's never going to be a nationwide, we're hoping never will have a nationwide abortion ban. And by the way, most people in America, if you poll them, 80% don't think abortion should be viable up to the moment of pregnancy. So let's find out scientifically where we're at in that boundary. And if I piss off the fringes on the left and the right, I can't help it. That's where I'm at. I'm never going to, again, try to parse my words for a specific audience. And if you don't like it, then don't vote for me. I don't give a rat's ass.
Yeah.
Because this isn't my career. I don't need you. I don't need this. I'm trying to serve my country because I believe in it as an American. I took the oath as a military officer. But that's the thing you have, Corey, is how do you parse through these things? How do you, if you're trying to always say, okay, I want to do the best for our country, but I just don't ascribe to either end of the crazy for me, or either end of the belief systems that are this extreme. Where does that leave me? I don't know, Corey, because that's not where the money's at. It's not hyperbole. It's not outrage. You're trying to speak in a way that you're trying to come to grips with their feelings, and you don't want to go against religion, right? You don't want to destroy their belief system or to belittle it or mock it. But you also understand that, my Lord, man, I have 3 daughters and a wife. If my daughter, got pregnant at 13 to 14 years old, I'd want her to have that option, right, where she doesn't have a child at that young age. I want her to have that option, and I'll be goddamned if I'm going to have somebody coming in here and telling what my daughter can do at 13 or 14 years old. So now, right, that is nuance. That is not this black and white. I would say I'm not pro-life or pro-choice. I'm pro-regulation, right? And I think that's where I think we need to have this sort of this argument or this debate about how this tribal party system drives us to the extremes no matter what.
Yeah, there's so much what you just said there. There's so much there to respond to. First of all, I think a lot of the work is done on a one-on-one level. Like, what can we all do is have those conversations, those personal, intimate conversations, whether it's with somebody who comes to visit your business, or whether it's over the Thanksgiving table or at your Bible study. I mean, I've had those conversations, and my response as a Christian who is, okay, is that what God says? Let's look at it. And we start with Genesis 2:7. There is a moment in between the creation of Adam, human being, and when he gets the spirit of life, when God breathes the spirit of life. So there is life, but there is not, it's not at the conception of the very first human being. So let's look at scripture. Where else does it say? You want to look at Proverbs? You want to look at Psalms? Where else does it say? Let's read it. But let's read the whole thing. Let's not take take a scalpel, take a half a verse here, half a verse there to make say an argument that we've already arrived at before we actually dealt with scripture. So that's one thing. But I don't want to squash on somebody's belief system. I want to take it seriously, but let's take it seriously.
Always.
Let's have the conversation. But I don't think I even earn the right into that conversation unless I have the relationship. So I think your approach now is great. I think you can also have, maybe you're not, in Congress, but you can be on your congressman's committee having influence. I voted against my Democratic state assembly member, but became friends with her subsequently. And she had me on her small business committee, even though we still disagreed more than half the time, 3/4, 80% of the time. She still worked language into legislation that she was helping to craft, because I was a small business conservative on a progressive small business committee.
It's wonderful. Yeah. That's how it should be, man. And I don't think people realize, I think social media, I think alternate media has tribalized us to a way. I don't know if the two-party system actually survives much longer with how poisonous the data environment is. And, I think there needs to be a third or fourth way. And Corey, I don't know, for me, who still, has sort of removed myself from religion, but every now and then thinks I'm still going to hell. It's or heaven, right? Depending on the day. Yeah. It's really difficult because I'm such a religious liberty guy too, as you probably can feel it, right? Your belief systems are your belief systems, and that's what made this country great, right? Is we have this ability to have freedom of thought and freedom of religion, and wow, right? That's pretty amazing to have that. But when you have people demagoguing issues, or when you have this fringe element that can make a lot more money and push their message into the ecosystem, over people who are just going to work every day, makes it very, very difficult for sort of an even keel to find its way through the choppy waters of the two-party system, honestly.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this about heaven and hell. If, you quote a lot of people who are very fluent in the language of God, but they kind of pick and choose, and they have like Bible-ish sounding language that they deploy.
They do.
And if the Ginny Thomases and the Donald Trumps and the Alex Joneses, like, they're pretty fluent in that Bible-ish lange. If they're going to heaven, I don't want to have anything to do with that kind of heaven. You know what I'm saying?
No, I don't either, Corey. You're hitting the nail on the head, man. You just hit the nail on the head.
So speaking of which, I do want to. There's so much to talk about here. We haven't even touched on January 6th and your work on the committee.
Not yet.
So
not
let's
yet.
let's talk about some of that stuff. There
Sure.
are so many quotes that you share, text threads and other intel that you share in the book. So one that jumped out at me, Congressman Louis Gohmert wrote to Mark Meadows, "When we lose Trump, we lose our republic. Fight like hell and find a way. We're with you down here in Texas and refuse to live under a corrupt Marxist dictatorship. Liberty." I was like, does he really think he's Braveheart? Does he really believe this shit? Like, number one, does he believe that Trump is the actual and only savior of the US of A? Does he actually believe what he's saying about the Biden administration? Does he even know what actual Marxism is? I had so many questions in that quote alone. So tell us what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I think, I met Louis personally. I talked to him many times. Great guy, one-on-one if you're just, if he's making barbecue. But I don't think he's the brightest bulb at the Home Depot, So I think he does believe in sort of this religious bent, especially the Freedom Caucus. It's a petri dish, right? And that sort of crazy bacteria grows in every meeting at the Conservative Partnership Institute, CPI. I was there. I only went to, I think, maybe 3 or 4 total meetings. And I'm like, this is nuts. I mean, and there's other Congress people who know what I said afterwards. I'm like, what have I done here? Why am I in here? And people question me too, right? They're like, Denver, what are you doing? Right? Especially after the wedding. They're like, what do you, I'm like, well, I thought the Freedom Caucus would maybe be a more free exchange of thoughts, but it's really a Trump-based protection society. They're like the Praetorian Guard for idiot ideas. And so, there's some good people in there, though. That's the thing, is the Freedom Caucus as a whole, you can say, man, there's some nuts in there, and there is, but there's a couple people, especially from the state of Virginia, that actually, they're very smart, very good people, Morgan and Ben, that I treat as friends. Lately, I mean, they've had to do some things to, I think, go against their true nature to stay elected, which is sad. But when I was first in there, they're like, Denver, you have to be in here because you're in a Virginia district. You have to, or you're not going to be reelected. That was it. Right. And this should shock people. I hope what I'm telling you, I do hope they're like, wait a minute. So you tell me you have to do these things in certain districts to get elected? Yes. Regardless if I ran for office and had to do this thing. I won by one vote in my nominating process. Oh,
in the nomination process. Okay.
Yeah. In the nomination. If I didn't say I was going to be on the Freedom Caucus, I would have lost. It's that simple. Right. And that was my first political decision. Real political decision in the political sphere was saying I would be a member of the Freedom Caucus to win, not because I believed in it, to win. And so when you see Louis Gohmert, when you see him talking about liberty, he's a star in his own evangelical movie, right? He is Braveheart in his own head. I mean, just look at the speeches he gave on the floor, Louis Gohmert hour, right?
Yeah.
So that's the thing, Corey, is I think some of these are true believers, and we have to. Some people are grifters. They're going to say whatever they get elected, but we do have true believers. And I think Louis is damn close to that line of true believer in Congress. And he meant what he said on that text because really it's his nature and his past performance. And the things he said before, how he votes and how he acts, is definitely in line with that text.
There are so many references that you made, whether it was the Mike Lindell speeches or the Alex Jones speeches, the what's his name? The other one, the Roger Stone speeches. But there was one, you dealt with Ginny Thomas's work.
I just had a smack. Hold on one second. I think I had oh my goodness, I think my wife just dropped a bunch of dishes out there. Hold on one second.
It's all right.
Hey, honey, are you okay?
I might just leave this in the recording, man.
I hope. Yeah, as I run out there, because we have a brand new Aussie Shepherd. Well, he's a year and 2 months, and it's like trying to wrangle a lion. So I don't know if, so anyway, there you go. So I'm back. You're
good. We're good. So buried in the many text messages we have of Ginny Thomas to Mark Meadows is one line that I thought helps us understand the mindset, not just of Ginny Thomas, but of many of our friends, neighbors, and relatives, just like what you're talking about now. She said, one of the things she said is the most important thing you can realize right now is that there are no rules in war. So, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but if that's the mindset, anything can be justified.
Spiritual warfare. I've heard it in my own face. You got to remember too, I've been very, fortunate to be called the tool of the Antichrist, the general of the sodomite armies, original. I've been called, my wife was called the spawn of Satan. She was accused of funneling money for George Soros or laundering money through our distillery court. I don't know. And listen, and if I'm the tool of the Antichrist and she's a spawn of Satan, we're the strongest power couple in the world. I mean,
and the whiskey's really good.
And the whiskey's good, right? We're drinking and throwing miracles around. So, when you look at spiritual warfare and what Jenny said, and if you read a lot of those text messages, and all her texts have been released, all of it really was a baseline that God is telling her to do this, or this is a God-based mission area, is to get Trump back in office. So, and there are no rules in warfare. And that forwarded text from Connie Hare, Louis Gohmert's chief of staff. You have a Supreme Court justice's wife interacting with congressional members, right? And a chief of staff. All of them have direct access to the president or to Mark Meadows, the chief of staff for the president. My Lord, right? Not to be weird, but at this point, when she says there's no wars and warfare, they also reference the fact that this is our Omaha Beach moment. So if there's no rules, right, we're in a spiritual war, right? That means that there really is no baseline that you need to use for policy or truth and actually to enact this war, execute it. Now you go back to QAnon, stop the steal, save our children, right? The storm, the Great Awakening, right? The New World Order, right? Globalist, right? The protocols of the elders of Zion. Now you're going into actually this sort of mishmash, this conspiracy sticky bomb called QAnon, right? That she had really grasped or held on to. And a lot of that is based on religious beliefs, sadly. Right. And if you look at the people who believe QAnon most fiercely, many of them are very evangelical. I'm not saying all Christians, Corey. I'm not saying all evangelicals. I'm just saying that it's metastasized in certain parts of the religious community, Christ-based religious community. That's where she's at. And I think people should be very aware that spiritual warfare against Democrats or against people who are not like you is something that some of these individuals ascribe to.
Yeah, man, there's a lot to explore there, and plenty of data has been done. We just talked to the head of PRRI that did a very expansive research project, and it's striking that if I walked into my church, it's very likely that if I look to my left and I look to my right in the pews, at least one, if not both of those church friends are, if not part of white nationalist movement, they're at least sympathetic to it, whether they would articulate it that way or not. But before we start to wind things down, we obviously need to talk a little bit more specifically about January 6th. Your book, The Breach, provides a lot of data, a lot of information that substantiates a couple of, bombshells. As you put it, one is House Republicans played a major role in the official efforts to overturn the election. And the other one is the interactions between the West Wing and militant extremists went beyond the phone call to the rioter that took place during the attack. So I'm curious, since the publication of the book, we've learned many more specifics on this front. Do you think any members of Congress or any staffers will ultimately be held accountable, or perhaps part of Special Counsel Jack Smith's work?
No. I think a lot of it has to do, I don't know if people don't know this or not, congressional emails are not foilable. And if you look at that, there's a lot of individuals also that had found out about encrypted apps pretty quickly. If you look at the text messages like Scott Perry from Pennsylvania, using Signal and things like that. So the other thing too is that they are congressional representatives, and there is a multi-tiered system of justice sometimes in this country. But what is illegal? If they truly believe the election was stolen, the issue that you have, Corey, right, is that if they're doing things with that belief system, if they're not committing wire fraud, which they've tried to stay on the edge of that, and that's a whole nother freaking hour of discussion on wire fraud and fundraising, which I think is one of the most radicalizing elements in the country is fundraising emails and digital fundraising. If you're looking at that, these individuals were part of this. You think Marjorie Taylor Greene, January 17th, said we should have martial law, and that there was a group that she was talking to of congressional representatives who also agreed with her. That should shock people. That should be so overwhelming right there that you should never vote for that human being. She's obviously unhinged, has no idea about this country, believed the election was stolen based on QAnon. Somebody was a 9/11 truther. My Lord, Corey, what are we doing, right? So these people are unhinged. They might be on the edge of sanity. They're grifters. They want to keep, they're like herpes sores on Trump, right? They're just not going to go away. And that's the thing that you have here, is that with these people that you have in office right now, or people that believed in it, I don't think that there's ever going to be any accountability for those congressional representatives. And I'll give you one more example. After my book came out, everybody should have asked about this phone call, but the White House numbers, nobody could access who had called that writer that day. So an NBC reporter went out and looked at my book and saw that a Oath Keeper had tried to text the White House in December of 2020. That's in my book. He called that individual, Kelly Sorrell, and she said she had been texting with Andrew Giuliani while he was a White House staffer, the son of Rudy Giuliani. So now you got one of the leaders of the Oath Keepers texting directly with White House staff. Shouldn't we have a moment? Shouldn't we at this point say we have a real problem if we have a White House, regardless of how intense those texts were, actually humored some of the worst parts of society? And for a lot of people, like you said about the person to your left and your right, Corey, those people might think the Oath Keepers are dandy. I don't know. But what I'm saying is that there's so much there that I couldn't get to because either stonewalling or the authorities of Congress or the resource issues that I had. But still, what I saw, based on doing years of counterterrorism and terrorism targeting methodologies and looking at situational awareness and common operational pictures, doing all that, there's something so fundamentally broken with what happened that day that I don't know if we're going to get over it anytime soon. I don't think we are going to get over it. I still think, from what I know and the 38 million lines of data we have, we need 2 to 3 more years of parsing that data to actually get to the bottom of exactly who is behind most of this in a sort of command and control way.
So you had serious limitations. It's another thing that's striking is that if Marjorie Taylor Greene, tweet farted out some, crazy conspiracy theory ridden tweet, that she could raise more money than your entire budget for what you were given on the January 6th commission.
Correct.
Do you think that Smith's investigation was able to go to that next level and the next level after that you were seeking when you were first setting up your team for your work on the January 6th committee?
Goodness, I hope so. For instance, Mark Meadows fought us getting his call records. So the reason that he could fight us is because we didn't have warrant power. We only had subpoena power. And that subpoena power wasn't for a criminal investigation. It was for the public trust. Now, I'm pretty sure that Jack Smith has Mark Meadows' phone records, and the limitation that I have, you're like, well, Denver, you got 2,319 of his texts, right? Wow. Great. We can't confirm if he sent us all his texts. I don't have his call records.
Right.
He could have. Now, was he a dumbass to send all those? It was great for America. I don't know if it was great for him legally. I'm glad he did, because it allowed us to go off into multiple directions. That really was the roadmap to the insurrection, was Mark Meadows' text. But I think that Jack Smith, with his ability to pull those phone records regardless of a court case, because, Mark Meadows pretty much sued for us not to get his phone records. I think that he does have more information. I just think that they need to move a little bit quicker.
Yeah. One thought occurred to me. I mean, you have been charging forward basically since you came out of the womb. And you don't strike me as a guy with a ton of regrets, but if you could take just a mulligan, if not a regret, if you could take a mulligan for any of your work, maybe, let's say, because you did a lot of education in the 90s, UVA grad, and then ultimately part of the Freedom Caucus. If you could take a mulligan for anything, whether it's for you personally or for the conservative movement more generally, would there be any? If so, what would they be?
Yeah, I mean, if from what you just said, and this is going to shock people, I think, a little bit, if I had to take a mulligan, I would have never run for Congress.
Oh, man.
And I think, listen, it was an incredible experience. And it was, but what it did to my family and my health, and, I'm good, but it was brutal. Now, there's a flip to that, as you know. Boy, did I learn. You cannot bullshit me. You can't say, oh, this is how Congress works. So, I was there. I was there not only as a congressman, but as a senior staff member of the J6 committee. And I went against sitting members then because we just weren't aggressive enough. And great people, they just didn't have the background. So I think for me, if I had to go back, how about this? How about this? I'd have never sat up there and said I would have joined the Freedom Caucus. I would not have, that one moment, have gone against my principles just to get elected because I thought the people I was running against were nuts, and they were. And that decision, but on the other hand, that decision also gives me guilt, because I wonder, the person who we were running against at that time was maybe worse than anybody in the Freedom Caucus today. So an evangelical purist who even thought that Thomas Jefferson should not be part of any of our history and thought that we should have only God-based laws that comes directly from the Bible. And so now I guess, Corey, I think it's me always trying to get back to who I thought I was before Congress. But on the other hand, being able to execute those lessons that I learned, right, in a way that I can make people understand how it really is. And if people hate me for it, again, I just don't care. I guess can't even care. And, I think there's an exhaustion after 53 years of this, and I'm starting to caring a little bit, Corey. But on the other hand, when I see some dumbass, pop their head out like a Green or a Boebert or a Gates or any of these individuals, and on the left too, I'm not a fan of Rashida Tlaib, let me tell you, right? So I think I really enjoy using a facts-based canon, to splatter that all over whatever stupid shit that they're saying that day. So there is some enjoyment in that, but if I had to go back, it would not be compromising who I was in that one moment to win a congressional race or a congressional nomination.
Well, for what it's worth, I'm grateful that you were in Congress because I think it gave you maybe a little bit more of a platform than you otherwise would have had at this point in your career, in your life. So I'm grateful for that. Well,
Bigfoot is complicated. It wouldn't be being shot for a movie right now.
That's awesome.
I mean, come on. Yeah. So you know what? You know who Congress helped? Bigfoot, very, very much. And, and the believers of the Bigfoot, myth system. So
real quick, we talked a lot about the breach, but I haven't referred to the Bigfoot book nearly as much. So give your elevator pitch on the Bigfoot and we'll definitely have links in the show notes for it. So
I got another 10 minutes, Corey, if you want to go. I got another 10 minutes if you want to give it a shot. If you want to. So, but if you have to go at one also, that's okay.
No, I'm good. The only thing that's restricting me is you're already in the afternoon. I'm still waiting to crack open my first whiskey.
That's true. Yeah. So Bigfoot is complicated. I wrote that. I self-published it for fun because it was my first attempt to paint what myth and culture and what conspiracy theories can do to people. So I started going on Bigfoot expeditions as a joke in 2004 when I told my wife for our 15-year anniversary we're going on a special trip, and I took her on a Bigfoot expedition instead of Hawaii, which was almost a divorce issue. So
and you're still married?
Oh, it's a hell of a story, by the way. She was not happy. That was awful. So I thought of it as a joke. But when I started talking to people who had all these different belief systems, I saw that there were 4 distinct Bigfoot belief systems. There were the BE believers, biological entity believers, who believed it was just a link from, Gigantopithecus blacki or Homo erectus, right? And it was some kind of missing link or a gorilla. Then you had the Magic Man theory, which is sort of the Nez Perce and the Native American mythologies on Bigfoot, which that's huge, right? Then you had the interstellar Bigfoots that were beamed down by UFOs and aliens, the Greys, right? As sort of scouts for the Greys. But then you had the mystical Bigfoot or the spiritual Bigfoot who was protecting us from the Dracos in this 200 million year plus war between the 5 harmonic universes, or the interdimensional battle of other beings that want to take over, the Earth.
Oh man, you got deep.
Yeah, so those are the 4 really major Bigfoot systems, and I got to talk to all of them on my first expedition. So I'm like, wait a minute, this sounds almost like, and some of them hate each other. I'm like, this is almost like religions on they agree that there's a God-like entity, but they're not quite sure how that God-like entity likes to interact with us mere humans. Wow, this feels like a cult. This feels weird, like a myth gone bad or myth gone good. I mean, I don't think there's going to be Bigfoot believers attacking the Capitol. Right. So anyway, so this is also the book that I was painted, even though nobody had read it yet, that my Democratic opponent said that I was into Bigfoot erotica. So I was on Saturday Night Live. I was spoofed on Saturday Night Live, on Colbert, Fallon, Kimmel. I was #1 worldwide on Twitter because I guess everybody thought that I liked to have sex with Bigfoot beings, or I was a Bigfoot furry. And it was just amazing to me that a book about disinformation, I was in the Democratic opponent, who was Olivia Wilde's mom, lied about me, about Bigfoot. And then I became this mocked, Republican candidate who loves Bigfoot sex. And my book that she was using was a book about disinformation. That's ironic.
Yeah, that's irony.
Right. So I got a call from a major Hollywood producer after The Breach came out, and he goes, "Hey, Denver Riggleman, do you have any audio rights or video rights to your book?" And I thought he was talking about The Breach. I'm like, well, I am talking to a few people. I'm sorry, man. He goes, wait, he goes, your Bigfoot book has audio and video rights? I'm like, what? My Bigfoot book? What the hell are you talking about? No, so he goes, I want that book. Right. So yeah, I've been talking to him and going to LA next week, I think, to talk to him more. The Bigfoot book series or movie might be made before The Breach. So, wow. I mean, by the way, so Corey, I don't know what the hell's going on in my life. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. Running distilleries. I got my new technical business. I got a high-end client that's going to knock your socks off when I come up on national news next week. So it's going to be nuts again for me. It's almost going to be like 60 Minutes again. So it's going to be a crazy ride for me and my family over the next week or two. Yeah, I'm still doing crazy shit, man. And it's all about bullies, man. It's all about fighting bullies.
So I want to put in a request. I'll talk to your people and your people can talk to my people. If you're out in SoCal, I need to take you to a restaurant that will change your life. I'm not a great Christian evangelist, but if I brought as many people to heaven as I brought to Katsuya, I'd be front row seat in heaven, man.
I was thinking about flying out next week or the week after, so I'll let you know.
Please
I'm
do.
Happy to. Because I have a buddy who lives up in Santa Cruz, but I also go down to LA all the time. So
SoCal.
I'm either in LA or so. I will. You got it.
Okay, couple more questions, and then we'll wrap
Sure.
up. This is the TP&R question. What do you think each of us can do to be able to share space with, have better conversations with, nurture relationships with people across our differences, people who think differently than we do, who have different beliefs than we do, who get their news from different sources than we do? How can we do better at talking politics and religion without killing each other?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a house-to-house battle, but when I say battle, I think it's an intellectual and empathetic battle, right? I think, honestly, people cannot be afraid to confront something that's, provably wrong in real time. I think you can do it with politeness and respect. But just happened to me, like, the other day when I had, a person come up to me and said, well, I think Trump is just a very truthful person. He's never lied. And so I brought out I said, listen, I was a Republican, but let me tell you a couple of things that he did where he did things that were completely inappropriate. The person goes, when did that happen ever? I said, well, he did retweet and did a video where it said that President Obama and now President Biden helped kill SEAL Team 6 after they covered up the fact that Osama bin Laden's body double had been killed and not Osama bin Laden himself. And I just let that sit there. They're like, what? I said, the issue that you have, I said, is that you're listening to a specific set of people or an echo chamber. And I'm talking like this. I said, expand. I said, always go with data and facts. I said, I want to tell you one thing, Lucy. I said, not her real name either.
Yeah.
I said, Lucy, and it could be Bob. I try to protect people. I said, Lucy, Bob. I said, listen here. I said, you have to at some point have to look beyond, your specific set of people that you listen to. And at some point, when you're talking to somebody like me, I want to promise you something as a human being. I'll never lie to you. I'll tell you exactly where the facts and data came from. I'll give you the source. So here's what I would say. I'm going to wrap it up right now very quickly. Corey, everybody who has an argument with somebody, just ask them, what's your source?
That might be the title of this episode. What's your source? Wow.
What's your source? And people have not broke down like, oh, but they have broke down around me like, well, I saw it on, I read it somewhere. Well, please tell me where you read that. I'd like to know that because here's my source. My source is that I saw every single phone call and text message, right, between certain individuals in a data specific way, in a facts validated way that allowed me to see who was talking to who. And then we talked to them in interviews about what they said on those phone calls and then validated their geographic location. So I knew exactly what they were saying and who they were connected to. Why do you think Ray Epps is actually an FBI plant? Go. Well, I read it on Darren Beatty from Revolver put it out there. Well, let me tell you about him, right? So then I go, if you look at that article, right, if you look at Ray Epps specifically, I've had this argument with people. He was never on the FBI's most wanted list. He was just on the ask question list. And have you ever asked why he was taken off? Because it was a cover up by the globalists. No, because 2 days after he saw it, he called the FBI because his wife was mad at him. So that's what happened. Like I was there. I said, I saw the phone records. Ray Epps was never in contact with any law enforcement or FBI until after January 6th when he thought he was in trouble, right? Because he had taken his son, and and his wife was not happy to this and was on a list. I said, that's why it happened. It's it. Occam's razor, and I have the data to prove it. So I think it's being able to do that empathetically and then saying, I will never lie to you. And we can always have these conversations, and I'm here, but I think you need to look at other things. If we can be empathetic and ask them what their source is, I think you can maybe start to turn them in sort of this house-to-house relationship building type of thing with conspiracy theorists.
Yeah. What is your source? That's a great place to start. But also in your winsomeness and how you do it, not in the combative coming out with elbows first, sharp elbows first, but winsomeness. So one last question and one piece of business. Any questions for me?
Well, I have a question. Was there anything in the breach that you disagreed with? Or anything where you had pause? Yeah,
I think what comes to mind is when I put together that you ran based on joining the Freedom Caucus. And it wasn't that I disagreed with it. It was just that, that's because I know who is on the Freedom Caucus now. I know what the origins of it were. And in principle, I was kind of there too in 2010-ish.
Yeah,
but
in principle, yeah.
But what it's become, so that was startling. So I'm glad that you addressed that. I'm trying to think. Listen, far be it from me to disagree with anything because you have access to the actual intel.
Well, yeah, but I mean, there's sometimes where I did put my opinion in there, like with Jenny Thomas. Especially with her background based on LifeSpring, and her cult upbringing and things like that. So, and I knew that even people who are facts or database said, did you have to go that deep? Did you have to go that far back? And I said, yeah. I said, because there's another thing in intelligence work. It's not just the source, is that past performance is indicative of future performance. And I think, that's part of the thing that I know that I'm okay with people saying, listen, Denver, I see how you saw the Texas stuff, but they were just aspirational. They weren't really crazy,
Yeah.
And so I've definitely had that and that's okay. Right. And I've had people said, maybe you shouldn't have put that in there about your mom, and I get that too. So, but yeah, there are some things I'm sure maybe some people are like, you're just full of shit, right? We don't care about the data. You're full of shit, or the data doesn't say this, right? That's not really where I came to, that's not the conclusion I would have come to. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, listen, I think there's probably pieces of legislation that we would vote differently on,
right.
when it comes to gun legislation, for example, but it's
right.
The thing is, I think the way that you go about it, there are those who that overgeneralize, mischaracterize, and vilify folks who would vote differently than they would on any particular politician or pieces of legislation. So that's where I'm more open to the conversation. I'm more open to being persuaded about your point of view. So it's a little bit more nuanced of an answer than, you're totally full of shit. You're totally wrong. I didn't have any of those moments when I was reading the book. So
that's okay, man. I've taken it all. I mean, I remember it was in front of 50 people that a guy in a MAGA hat ran up to me with 3 others. And he goes, you're the general of the sodomite armies. He goes, I've read about you. He goes, I read that you're George Soros funded. You did a gay wedding. That's against God. You're the general, man, the general of the sodomite armies. And I read about you. And he's screaming in my face. So finally I said, hold on a second. And I'm a congressman, right? My staff is coming around me. There's people wondering what's going on. They're standing up. It's insane. I said, let me ask you one question. He goes, what? I said, you can read? So that's how I.
I would have loved to have been there. That's awesome.
It was great.
So
yeah, that wasn't exactly diffusing, but I've been hit by so many different things, man, that I'm almost to the point I just smile now. I'm like, man, if you think I'm a reptilian humanoid and I took this human skin from a dead body and made myself into Denver Riggleman, that's cool.
Yeah. That's so cool. I did ask you before we started how I should refer to you. New York Times bestselling author, former congressman. Now I know how to refer to you, General Riggleman.
Now, listen, I only made captain in the Air Force before I got out. So, I don't want to steal any honor here, but the general man. But no, I appreciate it.
So
I do.
How can we follow you, find more information about Silverback Distillery and all the great work that you're doing?
Yeah, Silverback Distillery is at sbdistillery.com. We're also on TikTok, Instagram. My daughters, you got to remember, it's a woman-owned company, so it's brilliantly run, much better than if I did it. Obviously, you can see about my sterling political career. But so my wife and daughter are master distillers. It's a fantastic thing. And my other daughter does all our media, and my third daughter is getting her master's in game design, and it's pretty amazing. I got some pretty smart kids. As far as me, Rep Riggleman or Denver 4VA, those are my 2 Twitter accounts. I'm on Instagram every now and then. I think it's Rep Riggleman or Denver Riggleman. Every now I post dog pictures because I don't give a rat's. What are you going to do on Instagram anyway? So, you got that going on. I used to be on Facebook a lot, but Facebook is a little odd. So every now and then I'll post something. So you can follow me on Facebook. Again, if you like to see dog pictures or me dancing to 80s or 90s rap music, fantastic.
That's great.
If that's your thing, come on, join me. I don't give a rat. Or every now and then I'll, this is so bad what I'm about to shit. But here I am at my work desk, right? And I got some Green Spot Pied Irish whiskey still right here. Oh man, look at that. From my last podcast court. So yeah, so if you like drinking, if you like bourbon, if you like music, and you like some politics, and you like cults and conspiracies, and you like some data fact based crap, I'm your guy. So enjoy, if you want. But on the other hand too, my life, as far as my life with my family, is about perfect. Outside of that, my life is a vortex of insanity and wackadoo. So that's pretty much how it goes, man.
Well, definitely look me up if you are going to spend an extra couple hours in SoCal. I'll take you to a restaurant that will change your views on sushi if you need to be convinced at all. And I'm definitely gonna hit you up when I come out to Pennsylvania or DC, Virginia area. And most of all, I'm just so appreciative of spending the time. I'm appreciative of your work. It was great to, really get to know you and the work that you did through The Breach. I'll definitely be reading the Bigfoot book and watching the movie when it comes out. But really, thanks so much for spending the time, President, General, whatever the hell.
General Riggleman.
Yeah.
General Riggleman.
Yeah,
General Riggleman. The source. But yeah, but I appreciate you, Corey. Thank you, man. And I appreciate you taking your time too today.
You bet. And as always, if you dig what we're doing here, please hit that subscribe button, leave a review, comments wherever you get your podcasts, and tell a friend about Talk Politics and Religion Without Killing Each Other. You can find us at politicsandreligion.us. You can find me at Corey S. Nathan. That's Corey with an E. S is in Sam at Corey S. Nathan. Now go talk some politics and religion, and maybe drink some whiskey with gentleness and respect, and have a great week.